Welcome to Deena and Javen at the Regent Street, episode 6. We are here with our special guests today, Latoya Cameron and Kandyce Marie. We're excited to have a great conversation. We wanted to take an opportunity in the aftermath of the killing of George Floyd and the way that has opened up a conversation into so many different aspects of our lives. And it's not just police brutality, though that is a huge conversation right now, but it's opened up conversations into everything, including the arts, which is what we talk about. And so we wanted to invite some artist friends onto the show today to have that conversation. We are so excited to have you guys. Thank you for coming.
Thanks for having us.
Let's learn a little bit more about you guys. Deena, I have worked with Latoya in a workshop, but Deena knows you guys quite well.
Oh, I'm so excited. You both are here, so I just have to brag about you for a minute. So before we ever worked together, I knew who Kandyce was. Latoya, you were in southern Utah. So I remember seeing pictures of Kandyce playing Aida, and I was like, who is this amazing, talented goddess? And then in 2010, getting cast in Hair, you were cast, and I remember David Evanoff, musical director, saying, oh my gosh, Kandyce has a sister. She just came here from Southern Utah University. Oh my gosh, they're both so talented, such beautiful and amazing singers. And it was like, well, how talented can one family be? Okay, like it's ridiculous. So we, spent that time in 2010 going through the experience of Hair, and it was so special for us and so transformative to us. And we talk about it every time we see each other.
Oh my goodness, yes.
And so anyway, that's how I got to know both of them. It's ridiculous how talented they are, and I love you both so much.
I love you.
And I just felt like you would be the perfect people to come on and chat with us, because I know how open and loving and smart you both are. So thank you.
Thank you.
So tell us a little bit more about you, who you are, just so people who don't know you have more of an idea. Things like, how long have you been acting in this community? That I think that's of interest.
Well, household names now in 2020. But yes.
Do you want to go?
Sure. I didn't start musical theater or just acting in general until, when was it? What was the first time I had my first show? When I did Aida, it was back in 2005, I believe. So I love singing and doing all of that stuff, the entertaining stuff, growing up, but I never was really kind of serious about it until a friend had approached me to audition for Aida at the Sierra in 2005. And I was so scared. I'm like, I don't know if I can do that, and I auditioned and I got the lead role, the title role, and it was kind of the bug bit me, as they say, and it's just kind of been going on from there, from me touring China, doing the same show. I was playing the role of Nehebka, but I also played Aida as well in select cities. I did the show again at Hale twice. And I've done cruise ships. I've done a lot of stuff like that, and it's been fun. I love performing, and it's been a very interesting experience being a woman of color in Utah in the theater world. So we'll talk about that some more for sure.
I started doing theater. Well, actually, I wanted to do music first, was kind of the thing that I was going to lean into. But our dad is an actor, and he does mostly film work. And when we were kids, we were watching him and my mom run lines because he was in a film. And I was kind of intrigued by it because I was like, what is he doing? And what is my mom doing? And I just kind of sat back and watched. Kind of been amazed. I don't know why. Honestly, I don't know why. I have such a weird memory, but I remember a lot of things. But I remember specifically being taken back by the practice, the repetition of that. And then watching Forrest Gump, actually as a kid, was really influential to me because I was amazed how Tom Hanks did the subtle movement, and I was sobbing as this kid. And I was like, how does he do that? I want to do that. But I was completely just a really shy person. And honestly, one day in math class in junior high, I knew my math teacher was also the drama teacher. And out of nowhere, I was like, hey, I really would like to be in your drama class. And she looked at me kind of amazed, because she was like, you don't really talk. And I was like, but I really want to try it. And I was like, I'll fake cry right now for you. And she looked at me like, yeah, I really did. Well, I'm supposed to be doing math. And she was like, please don't. And she was like, let me think about it. And she thought about it because I didn't take any of like the speech and debate class or anything you're supposed to take. And she came back and said, you know, I'm going to give you a shot. Yeah. And I said, really? Okay. And when she said yes, she actually wasn't my drama teacher. She left. And Mrs. Clark in Kaysville, Utah, she gave us a monologue. It was Joan of Arc, Bernard Shaw's Joan of Arc, St. Joan. And I remember just doing it, and it changed my life. It was like the first time I heard my voice. Oh, and I was like,
that's beautiful, sis.
This is something I should probably keep doing. Yeah. And here I am today. So
it's so interesting to hear you both mention in those descriptions, like feeling shy or not knowing if you could do it, because to the outside eye, it's like you're both so powerful and so talented. And it's like, you just don't know how people are experiencing themselves and their lives until you really take the time to examine that and, you know, try to put yourself in their shoes. So, Kandyce, you started to get into what it's like being a woman of color in Utah.
Right.
So, okay, here we are in Salt Lake City in Utah. Now you're in the theater scene. Talk a little bit about what you were experiencing.
Well, it was interesting because I remember specifically speaking to patrons that didn't really seem as if they had been around other black people or just black people in general. I mean, we would get comments like, did they ship you guys off from Africa? Are you guys all related? Where did you guys come from? You know, I'm part of the community just like you, you know? And that was really shocking to me. I mean, I was just like, I mean, I'm just like you. I mean, I knew that I was different, obviously, because, you know, I grew up and, you know, realizing I was different in elementary school when a child pointed it out to me. I remember going home that day crying to my mom saying, Mom, what is wrong with me? Like, I was like, you know, I'm being told I'm different, you know, and she's like, baby, there's nothing wrong with you. Yes, you have different skin, but you are phenomenal. And, but that's kind of stayed with me for a long time. But it's I don't know, it's hard when people continue to point it out to you, especially, you know, in the community that, you know, is trying to be a part of theater, which theater is pretty much education, you know, putting yourself out there to, you know, to watch a story, to maybe, you know, I don't know, to get away from your real world, and as well as to maybe learn something, you know, and just to see and hear these people say things like that. It was really hard. I remember there was, I did a show, I did the Civil War. That was back in 2008 or 9. I played the role of Bessie Toller. I believe she had 13 children, and all of her children and her husband were sold into slavery. And we were doing a meet and greet afterwards, and a patron had come up to me and said, if you were a slave, I'd buy you. Wow. So, and I was still really new into the theater scene, so I didn't feel like I had a voice to really even say anything. I was just shocked. I had no words. Yeah. And although I feel that this person genuinely believed they were saying the right thing, that's the problem. The problem is that they don't realize that these blinders are on. They think that, oh, I'm going to bring you with me. You know, if you were a slave, I'd buy you. Do you know what happened to slaves back then? You know, they were raped. They were killed. They were, you know, practiced on, you know, for medical reasons, things like that. And it's like, do you not understand? Are you not educating yourself? And I remember my castmates were like, wow, like, did that just happen? And so these are things that I still deal with today, honestly. So as people, I'm just going to say it frankly, people aren't educating themselves. So, and as we're seeing now, even in the Broadway community, it's being noticed that, you know, BIPOC community isn't being represented And there's a lot of us out there, and we have the same stories just like everybody else, not just stories of struggle and oppression. So.
Latoya, what about you and some personal experiences for you?
So mine goes back to education. When I went to college, get my bachelor's in the arts, and you know, you're always told when you're younger, the arts is like the place where you're going to be accepted, you know, regardless of what you look like, your quirks, you're weird, we want your weird, right? And I was like, well, I'm weird, so great, let's do this. Like, I loved it. It made me come to life, as I told you. And it's interesting how my mindset was like, well, it's the arts, and I get to play and do whatever I want, you know, as long as I do the work, right? And as long as I show up on time, as long as I want to keep learning, as long as I want to keep stretching myself. And it was amazing how many times I was always pigeonholed into, yeah, but you're going to play this instead. Yeah, but you're going to do this. It always was the same kind of experience over and over again of like, well, for example, we did Seussical, which is like, you know, it's a fairy tale. It's a make-believe story. And yeah, we know that in the original Broadway production, Sarah Kangaroo is a black woman. I made it very, very clear that I did not want to play that role because I knew I could play that at this point in my career, in my college career. Dressed up, sang a song that was very, actually Gertrude, which is like the cutesy, wootsy, quirky girl, you know? And I was like, why can't I play that? I'm cutesy, wootsy, and quirky and weird. Like, why not, you know? Wore all pink, picked this like high-pitched song, and went in there, and I was like, okay. And I felt really good of what I delivered, you know? I prepared, I was ready to go. And in callbacks, they gave me, it's like this teasing thing always of like, here, we're gonna give you a chance, and I'll do it. And they're like, oh, okay. They give me another chance. Okay, that's good. Well, let's just see you for fun as Sarah Kangaroo. Let's just see. Okay, yeah, do it. And on the cast list, yeah, I made the show, but I was Sarah Kangaroo. Over and over again. I remember also when we were doing The Seagull, and I got called back for Polina, I believe. And I remember having an epiphany going, oh my gosh, right, it's a dark comedy. Don't forget the comedy. You know, it's not so like heavy. I mean, it is heavy, but like it's funny. So I remember discovering this like, oh yeah, and she's in love with the doctor. Like I got to play that, like, okay, and had this like beautiful discovery. And I felt confident again of being like, okay, like I'm here, let's do this. This is an opportunity where we can once again play whatever I want to play. Give me the opportunity. And I remember I didn't make the show, and I remember the director coming up to me, my professor, saying, you know, it just comes down to, you know, personalities. And I was like, what does that even mean? You know, apples and oranges. Well, what does that mean? Like, no one ever just said blatantly, there's not another black student or there's not enough black people in your department to justify casting you. And I was just like, why don't you just say that? Because I already know. But you have an opportunity to expand people's minds in the theater, right. You know. Yeah. We get to play. If you're going to require me to play, why aren't you playing? Why can't we expand people's minds? Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I can go into my career and all that, but that stuff in like the place that you're supposed to develop your craft as much as you can before you leave into the world, I felt like I was limited. And everything I had to learn, I had to do on my own because I didn't get the kind of training that maybe other students actually got to have. So I've always feel like I'm constantly catching up or having to prove myself that I'm worthy to be seen just like anybody else, you know? So it's, yeah.
I'm really interested in just you know, you talked about The Seagull. I'm very interested in the conversation surrounding colorblind casting. And so when I lived in New York, you'd go into the Equity Building and you'd look up on the board there, and there was literally up on the board in the Equity Building on 46th Street, there were a list of theaters who were colorblind casting, and they had little stars by them because it was this good thing, you know. And this is several years after August Wilson had given the speech where he called out colorblind casting. But it was still thought of as this virtuous thing. You know, we were taught that it was this virtuous thing. And then I was having a conversation with my buddy Ty Jones, who is the producing director of the Classical Theater of Harlem. And he's the one that was like, colorblind casting, you know. And he sent me this really fascinating article that was written by a friend of his who was cast in a production of Our Town. And they cast one of the families, I don't remember which one, the Webbs or the Gibbs, as a black family. But halfway through the rehearsal process, this actor wrote that he noticed that they weren't, that they were black actors cast as white people, and that who they were was not a part of the conversation, wasn't part of the rehearsal. And that fascinated me so much, because I think that there are cases, as you pointed out, where it doesn't matter, and then there are cases where you can't pretend it's not there. And that like pull is an interesting one to me, and I wonder if you guys have any thoughts about that.
You know, I guess I do. Because I mean, we find out now that colorblind casting isn't actually a real thing. Because if you take out the race of the person that walks into the room and saying that you don't really see them, then that's something that you have to ask yourself, why? Right. Because they are, you know, either white, black, indigenous, Asian, any, you know, POC, we have to be seen. So it's been the verbiage now, which I'm sure will change in the future again. It's not colorblind casting anymore. It's a color conscious casting. So they're aware of, yes, I'm this actor, regardless of their race, they are the best actor in the room, and so therefore they should get the role. The question about black actors playing roles that were specifically written for white actors, I think it also comes back to playing. I think it's, yeah, sure, but what would a black family be like in this world if they were given that opportunity to be written in that time period? What would they look like? Can't we just talk the way that we talk? Do we have to put on a classical kind of like you know, I guess I'll call it accent to be, we are doing classics, you know? Why can't we just talk the way that we've talked, you know? Like we see that even in like Shakespeare. Why can't we just be who we are and bring a new flavor, a new understanding, a new style and vibe into this world that we might have known, but that can transcend if we allow ourselves to play with that world, with this new element, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. It makes so much sense. I'm sorry to dominate this, but do you still run into a lot of resistance to that? You still run into a lot of like...
Oh yeah. I mean, I've been saying this since, I don't even know if I can say Hamilton, but since Hamilton, you know, everyone thought that Hamilton solved all racism that happens in the theater, because look, Hamilton has all the different kinds of colors and flavors, and, you know, they're playing the founding fathers and all these things. And I was like, and all the theaters were like, oh yeah, we want to do that too. And I went, y'all, it's a trend. It is a trend. Because guess what's going to happen? They're going to jump on the ball wagon because it's cool right now. They're going to check off the box. And then I'm like, you watch to see what their next season's going to look like. Because I guarantee you, it's going to go back to being whitewashed. And everyone's like, no, we've evolved. Look at Hamilton. And I was like, just you wait. Even people give me like the look of like, you're not appreciating what's happening. I'm like, I'll appreciate it when it actually is consistent. Mm-hmm. But until that moment, I was like, I see it, but I don't see the consistency yet. Right. And guess what happened? The seasons right after went right back to what? Being whitewashed. Mm-hmm. So it was a trend. Mm-hmm. I saw it in Utah. I saw it on Broadway. Like, we aren't trends. You know, we're people, and we want our stories to be told. We want to be given the opportunities just like anybody else, and we have been working for it. So it's not being a victim. It's being like, no, we've been showing up. Mm-hmm. We've been doing the work. Yeah. Right. We've been doing so much work where have you been? Why haven't you been doing the work? Why haven't you been showing up?
It's really interesting with everything happening to examine your role on the other side. And, you know, with the whole conversation about white privilege, it's really interesting to at first go, oh, but I'm not racist. I don't, you know, I don't have these issues. And I am telling you, you have a complicated relationship to race and participating in racism, even if you think you don't, because that's where I started out too. And now I'm, you know, just beginning my process of unlearning. But it's been so interesting to unpack and find my blind spots that I didn't know I had. And I've been thinking of my own, you know, history in the roles that I've played over the years. And I have had a privilege of being able to go both ways in the Utah theater scene. I can be cast Caucasian, and I can also be Mexican, Spanish, Iranian, Italian, and have played all of those, have learned the accents to play all of these roles. Didn't even think twice about it until now, and I will own that. And now looking back thinking, wow, like not my role to play. And I don't think that would happen from here on out with everybody waking up to this. But what I'm learning, and I don't want to make this about my experience because I'm still at the beginning. It's still like at the beginning of the process, but it's much more complicated than you think for all of us. And we do all have the blind spots. It has been a privilege for me to be able to claim to be one or the other. And I should say, too, that I am Mexican and Spanish and Caucasian. I am all of those things. But that it does raise complications, but also it's been a privilege to have been able to get cast. And there's a lot to unpack with all of that, and a lot of what was appropriate and what is appropriate going forward. But examining your white privilege, now is the time to really dive in and begin that work if you haven't been, or if you have been tone deaf up until this point. What would you say to people who are trying to educate themselves? And are you okay with them coming to you to ask questions, ask what they can do to be a better ally? Or do you think, you know, that's not appropriate because it's on us, like we shouldn't be reaching out for that guidance?
Me personally, I feel that if somebody wants to learn, like I'm willing to help them with that, but to a certain extent. There needs to be some accountability on the person that wants to learn. Because, you know, at that point, you know, then I would be doing all the work. And to be honest, it's exhausting. It's exhausting teaching people that don't want to learn. But I will say it's been, especially with everything going on, I've had so many people from even high school that have reached out to me, and they've, you know, apologized for their blinders that have been on since then, and they didn't realize the stuff that I went through as their friend, as their only black friend, you know. And so I love that they want to learn and that they're asking me questions, but they're also, those people are also doing the work themselves. So I just want more of that.
I agree. I mean, I've had this is probably the most, my email, texts, Facebook Messenger, like I was like, what is happening? I was like, y'all, where have you been? I haven't seen you at my shows. So I guess I'm going to be calling them out when theater actually pops back up. So get ready. Support theater. But I mean, I agree. I don't mind being a source after you've done a lot of your own work. I've been telling people, I'm like, you got a source in your hand every day, every second of the day. You wake up with it. And if the information is either too good to be true or so bad, it's like, what is happening? Keep looking, keep researching, keep asking questions, keep leaning into trying to find what actually happened. Because people, I mean, as we know, with everything, it's so easy for the stories to get twisted nowadays, for opinions to be so easily accessed. And so people aren't really understanding how to really do the research and stuff. I think we all are honestly relearning how to educate ourselves to research. So it's like after you do your own kind of stuff and you want to talk to me about what you've been reading, what you've been looking into, I want to have that conversation. But if you are looking at me to answer where you need to start, I'm going to throw it back to them. Like, well, where do you think you should start? Maybe you should start at, back in high school when they didn't teach us anything about the real history of how America is what it is today. So that's kind of where I'm at, where I'm like, do the work. Because it doesn't mean that we're not also we're doing some other work, so, yeah.
So, as you guys know, there has been this, there's been a letter that was written to white American theater that has been passed around, and I think you guys have shared it, I've seen. And it was based on August Wilson's 1996 speech, "The Ground on Which I Stand," which is an astonishing speech. I read that speech back in grad school, and then I reread it recently. And as now that I'm old and exhausted, when you're young and you read something like that, you're like, yeah, that's great. And then you're old and you've spent your life in theater. And this time I connected with it as an artist, just reading his words and just seeing that this is a man of the theater, a true artist. And that's his whole point, right? Is that it's what you said, Latoya. He's saying we've done the work. We're ready to meet you, on equal terms, And so a lot of the things that this letter brings up are things that we've touched on, but I wanted to bring a couple of them up. As actors, this might sound silly, but as actors, we want to get a role. You know what I mean? Like, we're like, I want a role. And so they talk about tokenism in here. And that's an interesting thing, because you've already brought up being the token black person in the play or whatever it might be. And then there's the pull between that and I would like to have a role and get paid. Tell me about that a little bit.
Oh, man. And button.
And I also think because we live where we live, that's its own set of issues. Because we're not in a diverse city. We are in Utah.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm trying to find the verbiage.
And so you probably would
I don't even
be able to speak to it a lot better than I can.
Well, it's like, I'm not going to talk about any particular theaters, but you could just definitely tell it's those boxes, It's once again those boxes of like, this is our season. Okay, great. Where's the black one? February. We got to put it there. Black History Month.
Right.
Or close to MLK. Cool. That's great. Check mark. And we're good. And we're good. We got the show. We got the actors. Like, we did our work.
So we're doing our part.
Yeah, it's like,
So they can get the grant.
so they can,
Exactly.
yeah, like we aren't, our stories and the struggle and pain that Kandyce was talking about that are always the stories that are picked in seasons like Big River and Ragtime. I mean, I love Ragtime, Hairspray. It's like it's always those stories that are being told, and they're getting a lot of money. Like.
Yep.
And we're not. Like we're not we're a part of that for a hot second because that's the only jobs that we can get. I don't understand why that's even a thing in 2020 when there's so many great stories out there that can be told and people are so afraid that it's going to cause an uproar. Shouldn't we cause an uproar?
Or people aren't used to it. This is not what they're used to seeing.
Yeah.
Like, well,
of
then
course
turn off
they're
the
not.
TV, turn off music then,
Right.
Because culture's all around us.
Right. It becomes like the check marks, you know, like we know certain actors that are BIPOC at certain theaters, and people go, yes, it's them, but they've never seen what they actually can do. Right. It's always in the pocket of that black show, or whatever that inclusive show is, that one show, you know. Mm-hmm. And then it's the opposite if, like, say a BIPOC artist gets cast in a part that might not be originally, you know, considered a BIPOC, you know, character, wasn't originally by a BIPOC artist. Then people are like, good for you. Mm-hmm. Or actually, not even good for you. We should be grateful. Mm-hmm. And then, no, that's good on the director and the theater to do that.
Yep. Wow. Which is like, well, hello, I'm the one that put the work in. You know?
You're like, yeah. Well, I mean, I just showed up and did the work, you know, but
they're getting the credit.
Thanks, guys. Like, I should just be always grateful for those opportunities, you know. Or you get the jabs of like, well, from even your own artist friends are like, well, you got the role because, you know, you're black. And you're like, actually, I've been training for a long time, and I know that there are certain things I need to work on, but I know I'm right for this part. And so, but I don't think you showed up for that audition, did you? No. So why are you getting at me for getting a role that I earned? Yeah. You know, like, there's just so much work that needs to go into the verbiage of everybody.
Would you say that when you're hearing these things from the outside, it's generally people not directly involved in the arts, even though you did say sometimes it's your own artist friends, but like you had mentioned patrons earlier. Do you think, is it a mix?
It's a
good mix of both,
yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
It's definitely, I've heard it from all corners. Board members, producers, like it's across the board.
I would love to know how that extends into your personal lives, beyond work, beyond theater, in personal relationships. Again, living in Utah and having, you know, been in this environment with a lot of blinders, people with a lot of blinders on.
Right. Well, my first ex-husband, he's white. And so that had its own challenges. The family, they supported us, but there were some things that happened. I remember there was one time the N-word was said at the dinner table and nobody said anything. Like, I didn't even say anything, which not to this day anymore, because I understand, you know, I was just speechless. But I felt like I should have said something. But I felt like my family should have said something too, my in-laws, but that was just how they said things, you know, back then. You know, this is just what we say, you know. And so it was interesting. Things like when I would go out in public with him, people didn't. It was like I was closer to privilege because I was with him. But when I was by myself, like for example, going in stores, I mean, the same people that would see me with my husband at the time, you know, they wouldn't even pay any attention to me. But when I was by myself, it's like, oh, how can I help you? Like every few minutes, following me around, like I'm gonna steal something, you know? And it's like, okay, I'm here because I wanna buy something. I'm not here to steal something, you know? And it's just, I know it's hard to explain, but you know, things like that, that I would deal with, or just the looks that him and I would get together. I've since then we've divorced, but I have 2 children, and obviously they're black. You know, they're mixed actually. Their father is Dominican, and you know, I am black, and I also have some Caucasian as well. But I fear for them. I fear for them a lot because I mean, just look at our world right now. People look at them right now and they think they're just the most beautiful children they've ever seen, and they're so cute and so fun. But my concern and my fear is, you know, when they're going to become the threat.
That's what I wanted to ask you about too, because I remember seeing a post on your Insta stories of a cute young black boy, probably around 4 or 5 years old, and the caption says, "When does this go from cute to scary?"
Right.
And that really struck me, and I haven't been able to stop thinking about that, because now that I'm a mom too, and I have a little boy, and I've never, you know, again, another blind spot for me, thought about what that must feel like. And I mean, no words. I can't even imagine. I know what a good mom you are. I know how much you love your babies. I love your babies. Our little boys are close in age, so it's like you would, like we would all lay down and die for our babies, like right now. So if you are, able to speak a little bit more about what you fear, what you have to teach him, starting now and as he grows.
Well, that's kind of the hard thing for me right now. My son, he's 5. He just turned 5, and then my daughter, she'll be 4 in October. So they're still at that age where they sort of get some things, but they don't get it still, obviously, And so right now everybody's the same, and I'm trying to figure out, when do I take that away from them? And I hate saying that, but I have to take that away from them at some point, because I need them to know that it's okay that they're different, but these are the things you have to do to keep yourself safe. Like, for example, there's going to be a point in my son's life, particularly, I'm going to have to give him the cop talk, talking about, if he gets stopped by the police, and the way that he has to act and the way that he has to respond, so that he doesn't become a threat to them, so that he doesn't end up getting shot and killed, and I can't even imagine what these mothers go through that have dealt with that. And I don't want to have these talks with my children, but I have to. Sorry, but I also am still teaching them to still love people, because that's still so important, and there are still some good people in this world, but unfortunately they have to protect themselves more right now. So, and I don't know, and I think of things just like in, back to theater a little bit. I want my children to see themselves on stage. I want them to see themselves represented, not just in the struggle. I want my daughter to feel like she can be Elsa. I want my son to feel like he could be, Prince Eric. Who cares? They're characters. They could be that too. I remember the uproar that went on with, is her name Halle Bailey? She's gonna be playing the Little Mermaid. Oh yeah. She's part of the group Chloe and Halle, I think.
Yeah, they're like twin sisters.
She's a beautiful black young woman. She's very talented, and you look at her and she just has that just youth feel of Ariel. But the uproar that went on with that, it's like, why can't my daughter have that? Why can't my daughter see someone like her playing Ariel?
I do remember this. I remember seeing people say, Ariel's a fish. She's a fish.
Right.
She can be anything.
Right.
She's a mermaid.
She could be purple. Come on.
I know, that'd be dope. That'd be cool.
But people are fixated on what they know.
Yeah.
And I mean, I've even had friends that were like, yeah, that's, they're like, I'm not racist though. It's like, well, look at what you're saying.
And then that's the perfect example of what we mean when we say white privilege.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Yeah. Anything else? I mean, there's a million things.
So did I even answer your question about tokenism and
Absolutely.
I was like, I heard everything you said.
It's okay, sis.
I feel like we covered a lot. There's like a million more things that we could cover. Maybe we'll do a part 2 or something at some point.
Okay, I'll be down with it.
I know I keep coming back to the August Wilson speech. It's so big. I mean, it's so powerful. And he mentioned something that I've been thinking about since I read it again a couple of days ago. He says that there are 2 kinds of black entertainment. That there is the entertainment, and he takes this all the way back to the time of slavery. That there's the entertainment where the slaves learned what the white people wanted to see. Right. And they learned how to do that really well. And then there's the art that happened on their own. together as a community. And and when he says, he keeps repeating this, this is the ground on which I stand. And he says, and it's so powerful. And I think it's what you were talking about. Why can't we have these other stories? We can do Ragtime, and we can do these shows that get done over and over again. Why can't we do Two Trains Running or something like that? And that's what he says. He's like, my art, what I do, is the art of my community, and that's the real spiritual work that he does. And that has just, because when I think of casting a show like The Seagull, which hopefully we're actually doing this fall, it made me think, how does it matter? Does it matter? Do I care? I don't think I do. But like Deena says, what am I not thinking of? When it doesn't matter to me if Arkadna is black, and it doesn't matter to me. Right. But what am I still missing? And is is asking a black actor to do that missing something? That just all of that starts unraveling for me. I wish it could be simple. For years I've wanted to do Two Trains Running in rep with the Cherry Orchard and use the same cast. I think that would be really fascinating.
I'm like, sign me up. That would be amazing.
Yeah, I think it would be incredible. But the whole conversation of late, I've really taken some time to be quiet and listen and watch. I'm not somebody who jumps on and says, "This is what I'm going to do," because I want to do something wise, and so I want to listen, and I want to think about what I'm not thinking about.
Right.
And I don't know why I just, what is my question out of all of that? When we do those two shows together, make sure you guys show up.
Speaking of showing up, actually, that's kind of another point that I'd like to talk about is that, you hear a lot of the theaters here say, well, the BIPOC community doesn't show up. Well, we don't feel welcome to show up. That's another issue. It comes down to verbiage and how casting, notices are put out. The shows that they do, there's been so many shows that I would love to do, but I don't feel like they're gonna take that risk to cast me. And it's sad that I have to say risk, because I would love to play the role of Cinderella. Brandy, hello. I love
how many times I watched that.
Oh my gosh,
I was obsessed with that version.
And Whitney.
It's the best. I know Whitney.
Good old Whitney.
And Whoopi Goldberg.
Yes. I know. What a great,
I know. Yeah, it was, that was, I remember seeing that and I was like, I have to play Cinderella one day. And she's my favorite Disney princess, so. But anyways, we just don't feel as if we can show up because there hasn't been that safe space that's been created for us. I have so many, people of color that want to audition for these shows and they're like, we've been told that they're not going to cast us. So
and is
why show up?
that because, again, of the verbiage, the way the audition breakdown is worded? Is it because you just haven't seen that at that specific theater? Is it a bad experience at that theater? Or it can be any of the above?
I think it's a mixture of a lot of those things.
Yeah.
Verbiage for sure, but also if we're not seeing ourselves represented, then why would we show up?
Especially if there are roles that are originated by a BIPOC artist and you end up casting it white.
Right. I remember there was a show, I won't say the theater, but there was a show that Latoya and I actually auditioned for, and the role was originated by a person of color. And they ended up casting a white woman for the role. They had the talent there. It was not just me and my sister, but there was other black women there. And we showed up and they still didn't cast us. And some people will say, well, maybe they were the best person. And it's like, maybe they were, but this is not what that's about. You ask us to show up and we show up and you still don't cast us. So of course we don't feel safe and welcome there.
Right. And I've had a lot of conversations in regards to that with a lot of actors who, of color, because they were like, what are you doing? Because they're like, how are you working? I was like, I just show up wherever I want. Like, honestly, if the role sings to me and I feel drawn to it, I will show up. Not everyone's like that, you know. If you feel unwelcome, if you feel or were told that you can't play this and you can't do that, then why would you continuously put yourself in that vulnerable space over and over again to get the same results? And I try to be that encouraging example and that person who's like, show up. It doesn't matter if it says Caucasian on the breakdown to me, because it's always what follows after it. Quirky, funny, and a flight attendant. I remember actually showing up to an audition that was like looking for a Caucasian person, and it was like, but anything about the breakdown had nothing to do with the race. So I was like, I'm auditioning for that role. Because I'm like, I can see myself in that role, so why not? So I showed up. I was the only black person that auditioned, and I got a call back. I mean, I'd like to think it was because of what I brought to the table, and I also question it at the same time of like, or are they just check marking? Like, see, we had a person of color show, like we called them back, you know, but didn't get the role. It's how can you, like, it's once again, how do you keep having those same conversations over and over again with the results being exactly the same over and over again, you know? So it's like, the verbiage of the breakdown, making people feel welcome, like, and actually like outreaching, you know, like go and see what our community looks like now.
Yep.
It is so diverse now. I mean, I did In the Heights, and the majority of the audience base was white. And I was like, I think I talked to maybe 2 women, young women that were Dominican, out of an entire room of white people. It's like the theater has to do more work of making sure that this is not only for the elite white 1%ers out there who have this money. We gotta be better. We gotta figure out where we can include everybody in it, because the theater essentially is for the community, right? It is a reflection of our community. So if we aren't doing that, we are a disservice to our community. So therefore, why are we doing what we're doing? That's what I think.
I agree.
So, and to answer your question in regards to like taking the time to be wise, to keep asking the questions that you might not be asking yet, I think that is smart, because I feel like the theater right now is also in a destruction, falling apart space, because it's not working, and it has been working for a long time, because the stories don't have the texture as it used to, you know, isn't reflecting our America, at least American theater. I've never been to Europe, so I can't speak for them. But I think how we communicate with artists across the board, of how we have to just be grateful to be able to do what we do, I think is honestly garbage. Because of course people are grateful. Of course we know that we're in a position that is unique. It does not mean that people aren't doing the work. It doesn't mean that people aren't putting in the time. It doesn't mean that they're not scrapping as much money as they can to show up to those dance classes or acting classes or whatever, to get that 1 or 2 or 3 jobs a year that pay enough to pay rent and eat food and pay, on top of maybe having a part-time job to get yourself by. Right. You know, it's like, of course we're grateful, you know. So that kind of mentality and that kind of manipulation and abuse needs to stop. It just does. Because being in a room nowadays, it's like that's kind of the treatment of not only all artists, but also BIPOC artists. You should just be grateful you're here. Right. It's like, no, I'm not. I personally am not going to be privy to that kind of behavior anymore. I won't put myself in that vulnerable position, and I have a higher expectation of our theater, of the arts, because we are supposed to be reflections of humanity. And if we're not exuding humanity with each other, then how are we going to give it to anybody else, you know? So, yeah. And that's my soapbox, I guess.
No, thank you.
Yeah, it was wonderful. Is there anything else that is on your minds that you'd like to talk about before we close up? Anything that we've I mean, I know that there's a lot.
So much,
I know
isn't
there's
there?
a lot.
I had a conversation with one of my friends from high school, and he's a white male, and he actually is part of the diversity department at his company. And so, but he was asking me, he was like, have you ever had a black manager? Have you ever had, or what else? He was just basically, anyone that's, in those higher up positions. He's like, have you ever seen anybody of color in those positions anywhere have you worked? And I was looking at all my jobs, and like even in theater, and there's only been one black director that I've had, and it just made me think, this is our world right now, and it's sad because so many people have blinders on, and there's a lot of successful people of color out there, but people aren't willing to give them the chance. And so, it just made me sad to think that even I, as a black woman, haven't really even seen that. So, I mean, it was just a thought that I had.
There's a section in the book, White Fragility, that asks, us as the readers to take inventory of that and go, so did you have a black teacher in school? How old were you? Did you have, who were they in positions of power? Like,
right.
Go through that for yourself. And it is mind-blowing to be like,
Yep. Wow.
I don't think I've ever had a black teacher.
Yep.
What?
Yep. I haven't had a black teacher
I
either.
didn't know.
I would have loved to have a black teacher,
I know, I would have loved to have a black acting coach, like a professor, because even I feel like I have to catch up with my own, like the stories that I'm supposed to tell, because I didn't get that kind of training either. So
Yeah, it's very interesting.
Yeah, even where people are talking about it all the time. I feel like where I work, we talk about it all the time, but unless I'm mistaken, it's only in the last 2 years that a black teacher was hired.
And that's so sad. So sad,
It's like,
because
why?
there's so much that people of color can bring to the table as well, and just the experiences that they probably have, and just the culture alone, I really, really hope that we can continue to move forward and bring more of that representation into all aspects of, work, theater, everything, here in America. I mean,
I agree.
I know that's a big ask, but
I don't think it is. I think
Really?
it's, oh yeah. I mean, we're out there. It's time. No more excuses. I think that we all been making excuses and accepting excuses for a long time. So
agree.
the talent's there across the board, not only in theater, and the time is now. I mean, we can either continue to accept those excuses as truth when they are false, or be a part of the change. And it's going to be hard, but I mean, it's going to be worth it, I think. So that's what I'm hopeful for. I'd rather have those difficult conversations. I'd rather
Right.
be a fire right now and always and speak up than where we were, because where we were, as we were
Wasn't
seeing,
working.
it was not working and didn't benefit anybody. So I don't think it's difficult at all. I think
I love your
we got
optimism on
to.
that.
I know. Is it idealistic? I don't know. But I don't. I guess I won't accept the excuses anymore that it's not possible, because it's out there.
Well, and I like to, I mean, it's unfortunate that everything that's had to happen to where people of color now have this platform,
Yeah.
but right now I'm all about making sure that my voice is heard. People are going to hear me, whether they like it or not. Let's have the hard conversations, because we can't move forward without them at this
Right.
point. So,
And it expands. I always feel like it expands far beyond. It's like the bigger picture. If there's a group of people that are continuously going to be marginalized and criticized, murdered, why don't people question that could happen to them? if we keep allowing it to happen. It's going to go across the board. So we are, as what's the old saying? We are as weak as our weakest person, or what have you. Let's strengthen each other. Let's strengthen and give focus on the groups that need that assistance right now, because in the long run it's going to strengthen all of us, or we will fall together.
Right.
So that's me.
I love that. That's so beautifully said.
Thanks.
Guys, thank you for being so vulnerable
course.
and taking the time to do this and, start these hard conversations.
Well, thank you for having
Yeah,
us.
thank you.
Honestly, just grateful to be able to use the platform to be able to help educate and just to hopefully reach somebody, maybe open someone's eyes. I mean, I feel like, even if you just touch one person, hey, you've done something. The work is beginning. So,
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's
Thank
just
you.
great to have you here. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Love you guys.
love you.
Love you.
All right. Thanks, everybody. That's us for today.